Listen, I love the Chargers this year. Just before we get into it, I want to put this graphic up and just kind of talk about like what do we think of the Los Angeles Chargers this year? What do we think moving forward? Just looking at this graphic that they're seeing on the screen right now, what stands out to you right off the bat?
You and I both feel the same, that we think that they are going to exceed what they did last year. Mm-hmm. I know both of you and I have talked a lot about how the Chargers had a problem with closing out games.
Oh, yeah.
But how they definitely are able to get out to a hot start. They're able to compete with some of the best ones out there. The Chiefs being in their division, they took them to the wire twice. Mm-hmm. I believe one of them, Justin Herbert, won. Was that right?
I'm not 100% sure on that one.
It was his first game, and he went toe-to-toe with Mahomes, though.
Yeah.
All in all, Herbert looking to make that next step and avoid the sophomore slump. I think both you and I feel very strongly that they get that done. They avoid some key players not getting hurt this year like they did last year on the defensive side. Mm-hmm. And I see no reason as to why not this team can go into the playoffs and might be able to make some noise. Yes, you still got to get through the Chiefs. Yes, we know that's going to be hell on earth, but there's a path here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more with everything you said. I look at last year, and the team stats are all well and good. I put those on there because I do think they're interesting. But for the Chargers, I don't think anything really stands out. 18th in points per game. Fairly average across the board. And that's kind of what you get from a 7-9 football team. Fairly average. The key stats here on the bottom left that really just jump out to me: yards per rush at 3.8 yards per rush. That was 30th in the NFL.
Really bad.
And yet they were 9th in the NFL running the ball. I mean, yards, rushings per game, so attempts. So they were trying to run the ball a whole lot, but they weren't being very successful. All the while, you have a budding superstar in Justin Herbert, who is like every time he gets the opportunity to prove himself, he does it and does it in stride. I thought it was very interesting. And then I think when you're a Chargers fan, like we have a good friend that's a Chargers fan, so he probably knows the stat better than anybody. But field goal conversion, 30th in the NFL. I had to throw that in there because it feels like the Chargers are always losing close games because of the field goal.
It's sad too, man. They're swapping out kickers constantly.
Yeah.
They used to have Young Ho Koo, who is now one of the most efficient kickers in the NFL over Atlanta now.
Yeah.
It's
and
weird.
I remember, I think it was game one a couple of years ago. I mean, 3 or 4 years ago now. I remember him starting his first game and missing a game-winning kick.
He missed a few that year.
Yeah, that year. I think he was cut by like week 4, but I remember he lost one to the Dolphins in like week 3 or 4, and he lost one in game 1 of the season. And now he's awesome. It's just so strange how like the whole kicking thing goes. I just thought that was interesting. Just looking at this as a whole, I do think the Chargers are primed for a big step forward, and a couple of those reasons are what they're doing in the offseason. And just when you look at some of the biggest changes that we're going to see from this offseason, obviously they bring in Brandon Staley. You mentioned the losing games in the fourth quarter, not being able to close it out. A lot of that did have to do with the old regime and the way they decided to handle leads. And at the end of the day, I think if they win the games that they were winning at one point and didn't give up in the fourth quarter, it's Brandon Staley isn't the head coach. I'll put it that way. But Brandon Staley comes in. He had an awesome defense with the Rams, so he didn't have to even move. He gets to stay in the same city and get a huge upgrade to head coach. We both have questions about that. I know we talked about that before. I'm certainly kind of skittish of a guy who, I think, at the beginning of the offseason when this hire was announced, we broke down his history, and we have he has been in the NFL longer, less time than we've been out of high school.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And that's just crazy to think. We're not that old yet. You know what I mean? So it was pretty crazy, his meteoric rise. And when you say meteoric, it was meteoric. He's so quick to be a defensive coordinator, and then 1 year at defensive coordinator, he's already a head coach, and for good reason. His defense was one of the best in the league last year, but he had, I would argue, 2 of the top 5 defensive players in the NFL helping him out a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see. I have huge questions about that. That's one of my biggest questions for the team overall. But looking at what they did beyond hiring Brandon Staley, they put a lot of resources into that offensive line, signed Rashawn Slater with the 13th pick in the draft, traded for a Corey Linsley, brought in a Matt Flyer from the Steelers. So brought in some pieces there to replace. You have them replacing Hunter Henry with a Jared Cook. I think it's probably an L, but I don't think that's a huge L at the end of the day.
It could be worse.
Yeah, exactly. So you'll see how that works out. My biggest question: how is that secondary going to look? You have Derwin James hopefully coming back and hopefully being healthy for the full season, because when he's on the field, he's awesome. He just hasn't been on the field a whole lot. Asante Samuel coming from the Florida State Seminoles, second-round pick. We'll see how that works out. I'm very interested to see the things that happen, and then obviously they struggle at the running back position. Austin Eckler was hurt a lot, so that was he was hurt for the majority of the season. That was a big part of it. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with Austin Eckler and what happens with that running game as well.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how this offense is going to piece it together, because I'm glad that you were able to show the graph behind the Chargers' average rushing yards per attempt at 3 point and change at 30th, but showing their how committed they are to running the football.
Yeah.
It was an Anthony Lynn thing that I think where he just struggled with putting games away, with trusting Herbert early on and knowing that, yes, he has the arm to do this, so why are you not letting him kind of finish things out, because you're struggling. You were literally going 3 and out, just milking 4 minutes away and then punting, and then that's how you allow teams to come back. So, I would hope with Brandon Staley stepping in and taking the reins. I just don't know how the offense is going to shape up. I don't. It can be different for Herbert, going into a second year. I'm glad that we got to see the success behind Herbert, because there's a lot of quarterbacks out there who don't get that good first year, who then have to deal with oh God, we have a new second year head coach.
Offense,
Then next thing you know, just play with me here, but Brandon Staley doesn't work out a 2-year window. Then Herbert's going on a fourth, or whatever quarterback it would be, 4th year, 3 head coaches, 3 different offenses.
Yeah, we hear that story all the time.
You don't get any familiarity, you don't get any continuity. And I hope that Herbert's able to take this and go forward, because I know how bright of a star that he really can be.
Yeah, no, I absolutely.
I'm not worried
agree
about the defense at all.
You're not? Okay.
No, I think that there's a lot of ways that Brandon Staley was able to use some of the Rams pieces. No, it's not close what the Chargers have. But then again, who's close to an Aaron Donald and a Jalen Ramsey?
Yeah,
no, you can't take it for that. But they do have Joey Bosa. I believe they still were able to bring back Melvin Ingram. They have a Kenneth Murray at linebacker.
Melvin Ingram's still a free agent right now.
Hopefully he comes back. Then I wasn't sure where he was going to go or if he was going to go.
Yeah, he hasn't signed yet.
Derwin's got to stay healthy. And yes, Asante Samuel is a good piece. I really liked him in the draft a lot. I think that when you look at their offseason, they checked all the boxes.
Yeah.
They only got better, so it's only fair that our record indicates going into next year.
I absolutely agree with that. Listen, I'm expecting a big jump forward. I am expecting big things from the Chargers in general. I really am. I do wonder if it will be, second year with Brandon Staley where we really see that, and this year could come with some growing pains. Yeah. I definitely do look at that defense, and I'm just looking at all their additions and losses. And guys, this is a graphic from a while ago, right after the start of free agency. So if there's a couple guys missing here, I apologize. But just looking at it, they lost a Nick Vigil, they lost a Denzel Perryman, got productive pieces from that linebacker core, and they really didn't address linebacker at all in the draft. So that's something that bothers me. They did, but it didn't happen until the 6th round. You know what I mean? Yeah. I certainly have some questions here and there. The secondary, I think they're gonna rely on Asante Samuel. They need him to be successful. You need Derwin James to come back. So yeah, I'll be honest, I am worried about the defense. I'm probably a little bit more than you are, because of course Joey Bosa, he's the centerpiece of that defense altogether. Yeah. But not a lot of other big names on that defensive line. I think Melvin Ingram. Listen, the only reason he hasn't been signed yet is one simple thing. I think he wants way more than he's worth right now.
And he does.
Yeah, and I think
he's at that point where he's trying to catch his last payday, but other teams are going, I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah, the Dolphins passed on him. I know that for a fact. I know he's been to other cities that I can't think of off the top of my head, but plenty of teams have had him in the building and let him leave the city. Yeah. So there's a reason for that. I don't know that I don't know if it's money for a fact. Maybe there's a lingering injury. It could be a lot of things, but at the end of the day, realistically, it's money, right? Okay. And then moving on, I do want to just quickly throw up their draft, just because I do think it's interesting the way they attacked their draft. Obviously, had Rashawn Slater fall into their lap at 13th. I think that was a great pick.
Can't go wrong with the round 1 and 2.
Worked out great, right? Yeah, Asante Samuel in the second round, and the fact they were actually able to trade down and still get Asante Samuel. I believe that's how that one worked. So that was a good one. Grabbing a Josh Palmer out of Tennessee, guy that we're obviously pretty aware of living in the area. Surprising in the 3rd round, but it was kind of a weird year.
I'm surprised to see the name. I'm not surprised to see wide receiver be addressed, though.
No, not at all. Not at all. Especially you look at the roster, right? And you just look at what they're doing, especially just their skill position roster specifically. Yeah, okay, you have Keenan Allen. We know him, right? He's he's a superstar. Mike Williams, and there's buzz from the Chargers, that he's going to have an even bigger role in the passing game. But this could be his last year. This
you
could.
Really think so though? Because our buddy Juan, the Chargers fan, he likes Mike Williams. Says he's a dog. He's a go up and get
I like
it kind
Mike
of guy.
Williams too. Yeah,
I want to see him be more than the jump ball guy though.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I don't know what to expect. I don't know. I really don't. I don't know what to expect. I look at Mike Williams as a guy who is very, very good. Everyone would love him a lot more if he was drafted in the second round and not the top 10, I think. I mean, so exactly. Yeah. So he was drafted before Patrick Mahomes in that draft. So it was early. I don't know what to expect. Like if Mike Williams is expecting a huge payday, it might not be with the Chargers. This could be his last season unless he's re-signed or whatever happens there. I looked at Josh Palmer, similar skill set, outside receiver, good route runner, things like that. Obviously less, not nearly the name that Mike Williams was, but I do think I do think Josh Palmer's a little bit of a backup plan for if Mike Williams doesn't pan out and they don't decide to keep him long term. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see Jalen Guyton, a speedster type of guy. Like every team has one. He's your speed guy. You don't know, maybe he develops into a real weapon at every level, but right now he's a guy who's going to have 3 or 4 70-yard bombs, and that might be the extent of what he is. You know what I mean? KJ Hill, late round pick. He was a guy I loved last year. I don't know if you remember him. He was drafted a lot later than I thought he would be. But yeah, so I just look at this roster. I'm like, okay, question marks at tight end, question marks at receiver outside of Keenan Allen. The only reason Mike Williams is a question mark because he's had those injuries, and we don't know if he's there long term. And then I have big question marks at the running back position behind Austin Eckler. I think Larry Roundtree is going to be a big piece of that, actually.
I think Roundtree could easily contribute. I like Justin Jackson though. I'm not completely out on Justin Jackson. Yeah. I am completely out on Joshua Kelly though.
Yeah, I'm glad we're there. I'm out on Justin Jackson because I feel like he had the opportunity and he missed it this past year.
Yeah, I saw some runs like that was the problem is that on the stat sheet it didn't look like that because he would either have this just physical, athletic 8 to 9 yard run, and that was pretty much the extent. Yeah, because then there was a lot of others where he just gets stuffed at the line. Yeah. But there were times when he did get on the outside edge and was able to get some contact going. He fed off of it.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. So we'll see what happens there. I just look at the offense as a whole, like it a lot, but I do wonder. Okay, do I just love a Herbert enough to think like, okay, it's gonna work this year for sure. I feel pretty confident saying that, but then what's the future going to hold? I think there's a lot of questions to be answered. The pick of Josh Palmer, it'll be interesting to see if that one works out, because if it does, they might have a little bit of breathing room with Mike Williams, because Mike Williams, he deserves to be paid. He, obviously not top end wide receiver money, but he certainly deserves to get a good contract, and hopefully he can stay with the Chargers long term.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Let's circle back to the first graphic we had up there and just talk about our projections, right? And it's kind of cool. We have this system where we're actually keeping track of every single team's win and losses and looking at it through every single team. So we're not just picking a record. We're actually going through every single game. And when we say one team wins, that means the other team loses, right? So we're actually breaking it down that way.
It's difficult. It is.
It's a little bit of work, but it's fun.
If you're going to do it justice, that's how you
exactly
do it. Yeah.
So that's how we feel good about these projections. And hey, maybe when we get to our 7th week of this series, we might decide, oh, you know what, maybe the Chargers lose an extra game or one extra game. Yeah. But overall, this is where we think, and we're very similar. I have them at 11-6. You have them at 10-7. Their over/under win total is 9.5 or 9.5. Excuse me. Do you feel confident, super confident? Obviously, you're only half a game ahead. Over that, I'm a little bit more. How confident are you that they hit double-digit wins?
Yeah, I wouldn't bet on it.
No.
I wouldn't. Looking at their schedule and looking at some of the way that the weeks shape up and the teams that they're able to take down, I did mine with KC sweeping them. By the way, I know you did that with a split, so I went into it knowing that. I really like this offensive line unit. I really think Rashawn Slater's going to be able to step in and be an instant addition, plug and play starter there, and hopefully get things going. So I hope I'm not coming across as biased though with giving this offense too much of the benefit of the doubt with Herbert, because there is very much so a narrative that can be spun. I won't buy into it, of course, and I didn't, but that the second year slump does happen, that the new head coach doesn't click right away, that, like you said, this defense doesn't have the same star power that some of these other teams do, and especially when you're Brandon Staley leaving the Rams, who were loaded at that position. Yeah, it could get ugly, but I see the absolute ugliest being a 6-7 win.
Yeah, they're not gonna.
There's no way.
I would have said
worse
8.
than that.
I'll be honest with you.
Exactly,
I
because
just
there's no way
can't
with
see
Herbert.
them
And
exactly.
I've seen enough to know that he can keep you competitive.